Thank you for joining us for our February team chat. This month we are talking about technology as it relates to HR. And I want to just quickly shout out our team members who are not here today. They couldn't make it, but we'll miss them and their contributions to this conversation. Tammy and Sandra, so we're going to just jump right in and talk about technology, which feels like sometimes people don't want to talk about. It feels like maybe it can be a tense topic because technology also means you got to learn something new. That might mean change is coming, but technology can be a really great thing. And so we're going to talk about both sides of that. We're going to talk about maybe some challenges about technology and the great things that can actually come from it too. So I'm going to just kick us off with some questions, and we're going to just go around, team, and answer as you feel compelled to answer. Does that sound good?
Good.
All right. Actually, whoop, whoop, TV timeout. I want us to go around and just say our name, and I know we've got it down here. Whoop, it's over here. But I just want us to go around and say our name and maybe a fun fact about you. Or no, what do you like about technology and HR? Deanna?
I'll go.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Deanna. What I like about technology with HR is the technology can eliminate some of the administrative pieces that are so time consuming so that you have the ability to then better focus on the actual component of HR, which are the people.
Yeah, I like that too. Robert?
Hi, I'm Robert, client relationship manager. I'm not as involved in the HR function, but from an HR perspective, just the efficiency that technology can create, and so also some of the organization. So for someone who may, kind of be all over the place, it's a way to kind of organize those things, organize trains of thought, and kind of stay on task.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Shannon?
Hi, Shannon. I think that especially for our clients, because they don't necessarily have in-house HR, it helps ensure compliance from a lot of different angles. So if they're using something, for example, that they use as a personnel file, an electronic personnel file, it'll help ensure compliance, even if the person interacting with the software isn't as aware as to what requirements are from a compliance perspective.
Rachel?
I'm Rachel. Shannon took part of my
Sorry.
my thought, but I think as us being consultants, business partners to our clients, and that we've always been in a remote setting. I mean, even before COVID, we have, and without technology, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs. So it has helped in efficiencies. It's helped in being able to access things from our clients where they might have closed their offices and they still haven't opened them again, and they're all working remotely. So I think it helps a lot.
Yeah. And I'm Jessica, and I want to elaborate sort of on what Rachel said, that, with COVID, we've all kind of been put into this remote capacity or not we all, most people have been put into a remote workforce, and the technology has allowed us to continue to communicate in a way that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So, through platforms like Zoom, even chat platforms, even I think people are utilizing email in a different way these days. And so, I think technology has been really helpful in making sure that people stay connected, even if we are not together. So anyway, thank you guys. That was great. So I'm going to just throw out the first question, because I think sometimes when people hear the word technology, they cringe a little bit. Does anybody here cringe? I don't cringe. I like technology.
Bring it on.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so what are some challenges that we have with technology as it relates to HR?
Well, I'll just say with me and some of my clients, it is lack of knowledge. So they're not used to some of the employees that work for them, or even the leaders of the organization are not as versed in technology from being in an in-person environment to now being remote. So there's been a lot of challenges with that. I've done focus groups with some employees where they're even saying, we've been working like this for a year and we've never had training on how to do this remotely. And so they're looking to us as their HR people in their companies to help them and to help them figure it out. And you know, what to us might be super simple, to someone that's never worked with technology in this environment, because it doesn't apply to their job at all. So someone that might be a, you know, gym teacher at a school, or you know, that I don't even know, but you know, that they don't work on a computer on a daily basis, and now they've been forced to. So I've seen a lot of issues with just the lack of knowledge.
I think too, for companies, sometimes they tend to get a little defensive, especially pre-COVID, that technology would replace people or replace a position, or that they would have to reduce staff because of technology. There's that just negative perception that when you add technology, it means you need to eliminate someone, which there's cost savings. So maybe management is motivated in that way, but it doesn't necessarily need to be the case. So I think that's usually there's usually hesitancy around it, at least from the staff's perspective, maybe not management's perspective for that reason.
Deanna,
No, go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say, Jessica, you kind of touched on it already, but there's just kind of human nature, sometimes a bit of resistance to what's uncomfortable or what's new, or sometimes, you know, just gravitating toward what we've always done. And so with it being kind of new and a new concept, sometimes it's hard to gravitate towards that.
That's a good point, Robert, because I think people need to understand it takes time for it to work. Because I remember a year ago when this all kind of first started, and some of our clients that weren't remote before, that all of a sudden went remote, and they were struggling with keeping communication and employee engagement. And then, you know, so we would talk to them about what they were doing, and they would, you know, set up Slack or Teams or whatever to, and they're like, but nobody's using it. I was like, well, what are you doing to get people to use it? So that you have, it's repetition by the leader to create that engagement. And sometimes if it doesn't work immediately, they think it's not working at all. But even with how useful technology is, it still takes time to get accustomed to it and to get people go through the change process to use it. And then the other part, I think, is people are accustomed to using technology in their personal lives. And so it's difficult sometimes to put them in an antiquated work environment. You know, they're using apps, they have instant contact with their information or with companies through apps or live chat, or, you know, a lot of what they're doing in their personal lives is done via technology. And then sometimes they might be going into roles or into their work where it is a little more antiquated, where you can use that same technology concept in the workplace.
You all brought up really good points. The other thing on the other side of the spectrum is that just because technology is available to us doesn't mean we need to use all of it, right? So we don't need to really let people drink through a funnel, right? Like just slowly implement new things, because otherwise people get overwhelmed and then they're definitely not going to use the technology available to them. So go ahead, Deanna.
I was just going to say, something came to mind. One thing that came to mind, I remember somebody saying, I was in a networking thing, and it was, you know, of course, over Zoom. And one of the gentlemen in the group said that technology, as an introvert, for him, he's accustomed to technology because he's always developing. He's a developer and he does all of these things. But this kind of thing, is very difficult for him. So the communication via technology and being essentially on the whole time in front of a camera is difficult for some people to be able, it's very draining. You know, he could spend a whole hour on something and it would drain him for the rest of the afternoon. So something to consider.
That's interesting.
I think to kind of to tag on to that a little bit, the idea of technology is to streamline in theory, but if people find themselves having multiple systems, apps, platforms that they're using, then even though each individual platform might streamline one process, the fact that people have to go to a million different places to get something done defeats the purpose. And it's easy to get caught up in that because someone will email you, hey, have you seen, this new thing, Slack? And all of a sudden you're signed up for Slack. And, oh, hey, have you seen this new thing? And you just, everything is good. And so you have to monitor how many things you're utilizing, when you're implementing them, how they talk to one another, and just make sure you're not the objective is streamlined and that you're not defeating the purpose.
I would say that's kind of where we come in, right? Like we can, as it relates to HR, I'm going to continue to say that throughout this, but as it relates to HR, we can have these conversations about how are you streamlining your technology and how are you utilizing it efficiently with your staff. I've worked with clients where they're like, yeah, we have this software, that software. And I'm like, well, but do you use it? And do they talk to each other? Because you're logging in and logging out how many times a day into each software. You could have applicant tracking, you could have onboarding, you could have payroll, you could have, communication with your employees, you could have performance evaluation and everything. All of that could be a different platform. And you're eliminating efficiencies if they don't all talk to each other. So let's go into what are some benefits for small businesses as it relates to technology. Small businesses specifically, because that's what Employers Advantage focuses on.
Well, I think one of them that Shannon mentioned before was it creates compliance for them where they may not know that they need to be in compliance with certain things. And so some of the technology creates that compliance for them, like with the applicant tracking and the onboarding. And then if you're all in the same system, if you hire that candidate, you just click the button and they, become an active employee and everything is done through the process of that system you're using, creating consistency and compliance. I think that's a big one. That's
Anybody
it?
Else? Just compliance? Boring.
I think it just kind of goes to, what I said at the beginning. Just streamlining, and making everyone's life easier. The one drawback that I see, and this is 2021, and I have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that there's, payroll companies out there where their systems don't talk to each other. So,
right.
if you have hourly employees where you have to track their hours and track their time, you have a timekeeping portal that somebody has to go into and manage, and then they have a whole separate portal that they have to use in order to do payroll. And I've seen, clients get extremely frustrated with that because they are smaller businesses and there's not a lot of product options out there for them, technology options for them to be able to get it into one portal like a lot of the large companies might have, if that makes sense. So it's you would think that things like that would have caught up with technology and the ability that everyone has, but there are still some drawbacks with it, I see.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to efficiencies because, I think if you are the pro cupcake maker, right? Like you like to make cupcakes, what do you, I mean, HR is not your thing, and that's okay. You make cupcakes. I'm in HR. I don't make cupcakes. So it allows for efficiencies. And then, you would have maybe the person aspect of HR through something like Employer's Advantage to come in and help you manage employee relations and that kind of thing. Or even to manage the system itself. But the system can create a lot of efficiencies in your small business without the expense of a full-time HR person.
One of the efficiencies that I would say is high that I've noticed is documentation and record keeping.
Absolutely.
It's to me, which then piggybacks off of compliance, what Shannon said is, that's one thing in HR that you just preach all the time is documentation. And so, it's very easy to write something on a piece of paper or a sticky note or, some issue that you might have and then lose it. But if you're utilizing a technology platform that's set up, it's very easy to document, whether it's taking a screenshot and saving it as a PDF or, putting it directly into a notes program, that's on there. So I think it aids in the documentation part a lot.
I also think,
go ahead, Shannon.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we talk a lot because that's what is the need for us. We talk a lot about how it improves process from a management perspective, but it's also beneficial to employees. I mean, it allows them to get answers quicker, allows them to view documents that they may need quicker. For example, for open enrollment, if it runs through a portal, makes that so much more smooth. They can get answers quickly. They can fill out all their forms electronically. There's not, especially in a remote space, printing, scanning, when you may not have the devices that allow for that. So I think as well, it also is beneficial to the employee. And we can't lose sight of that for the company that wants to implement it. They still need the person, but it, gives them some assistance.
It gives ownership to the employee too, right? They can look at the information, ask questions if they need to, whatever the case may be. That's a good point, Shannon.
And it saves paper too. Oh, I'm sorry.
It does.
If you
which
want
saves trees, which saves the planet,
right?
which saves us
Right.
all.
So
look at what we do in HR. We save the world,
right? But if you're environmentally conscious, I mean, look at all the paper that you're saving. I mean, you literally, but besides a few compliance pieces that depending what state you're in, that you might need a hard signature or something like that. It's literally all your paperwork can be gone and it's all online. So
and there's cost savings because you might be reimbursing employees for the cost of ink or printers or anyone who's working remote. Then if you create a process that's technology based, you don't have to maybe reimburse the employee for all those ancillary items that they don't need.
Right.
Can pay them a higher wage because you're saving all that money.
Right.
Look at that, Deanna. So innovative. Okay, I'm going to move on to something that I think is kind of near and dear to us. So what are some things that small businesses should be aware of as they look into and try to implement some efficient technology? I know that we work with some clients who often don't think through all of the pieces of the puzzle when it comes to technology for their small business. And so what are some tips and tricks that you might share?
I think primarily, and I think folks might agree, make sure it's something that's meant or can cater to small businesses. There's a big difference between a vendor that can accommodate 10,000 employee companies when you only need it to accommodate your 20-person company, because you want to make sure you're equally as important to the vendor. And in that scenario, you may not be. So I think make sure you choose someone that's scalable and actually has a department or a focus on small business. And I think what goes hand in hand with that, and this will answer a question I think we might move into later, but it was the one question that jumped out to me. Customer service. Are they readily accessible? Do they have a chat box? What's their response rate turnaround? Can you get a person? Is their phone number available? Because I work with a platform right now, there's no phone number available and there's no chat box. So your only option is to find the answer yourself or send an email out into the ether. And we utilize it for payroll purposes. So the questions need an immediate answer in a lot of cases. So customer service, do so much due diligence on what they offer from a customer service perspective, especially if you're not HR. You know, I can usually fumble through and figure something out myself because I do HR, but for someone who's interacting directly with a platform who doesn't do HR, they really need the answer.
I second and third and fourth and fifth that, because honestly, the customer service piece, it could make or break. And I would, even if you're inquiring about technology, ask the same question to 3 different people before you commit to a technology platform. Because if you're getting different answers, it's probably not consistent.
Yeah.
And customer service is so important, because when you are in a pickle, you want an answer. And if you can't get someone to give you that answer within 24 hours, 48 hours, you know, that's payroll. You got to know right away. Yeah, I cannot say that enough. That was great, Shannon.
And I think I can speak for a lot of us too, is that a lot of our clients utilize us to help them figure out what technology is best for their company. And you know, if you're someone out there that doesn't ask your HR about it, I think you really should, because, you know, like Shannon said, we're all working in it every day, all day long. And so if you want to know, you know, what's the best platform for your company, or, you know, for your employees to communicate, or payroll or benefits or anything like that, we're able to help point you in the right direction, and even help with the implementation process too, you know, because we have experience with all these different technologies. So
I would also say trust your HR professional,
yes,
because they are doing this. They probably kind of know. I don't know. Again, I don't bake cupcakes. I'm in
Right.
HR, so.
Well, I think that's also, like, you know, we give props to Employers Advantage, but we don't have any relationships with vendors that benefit us. So
Right.
if we're
Right.
telling you we
Right.
choose one over another, it's just simply because we've used it at multiple clients, or we've seen how some of the others work. You know, it's no skin off my back, other than it's easier for me to use. But I think that's important to remember. We
Right.
truly want what's best. There's no benefit to us one way or the other.
Right. We want whatever is going to be able to make you work easier, your life easier, your employees' life easier, and then in turn, our life easier as well, because we're handling all your HR for you. So it's a benefit for everyone.
That is true. We get no kickback, just that our kickback is that you get this wonderful platform to utilize and create efficiencies.
That's one of the things, speaking from the person sort of outside of HR and in my daily function, utilizing your HR professional so that you don't get caught up in the bells and whistles. So there's great technology, then there's great technology for me. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How does it solve for my concern or my issue, versus it does 80 things, right? That are all great, but we don't need any of those. We just need something that does these 2 things really well, because this is our issue. And that's, again, where, you know, Employers Advantage or your HR professionals come into play, because I know for me, I can get lost in all of the bells and whistles because it's so cool, but then now what? You know, I'm still at the same issue. So
Yeah. I also, I personally like technology or platforms that allow for, like you said, like the 80 different things, right? But I'm only going to implement these 2 right now. But as the business grows, well, now we can implement this other thing that now will help us in this stage of growth. And now we have this other thing that can now, so over time, sometimes it works out for small businesses to look into different platforms that can do everything, but maybe we're not utilizing it all at the same time. Or right now, right? So that we create sort of this timeline of implementation so it's not overwhelming for everybody. Anything else on that?
I think it's important to know what type of training the platform offers. Are there online videos? Do you have a live training, introductory training out of the gates? Are multiple people able to attend to the training? Kind of what that looks like, and if there's additional costs associated with it.
I think it's also important to have sort of a point person for the technology to say, hey, they do offer this training. Hey, they do have this, to be that one person that communicates with the software or the platform. That might be sort of the guru, if you will, for that software to help people with questions internally.
Right. That's a good point, because if you don't have one key person that's familiar with it, you're never going to utilize it why'd you even buy it? Right? Like, yeah. You're not going to utilize it to its fullest capabilities, but you have to have someone take the time to learn it. So, yeah.
All right, I'm just going to repeat the question one more time, just make sure we've got all the things that small businesses should be aware of as they look into and try and implement technology.
I think we covered it.
Captured it? Okay.
Yeah.
So as we are navigating this new life, I guess it's not new. We're almost a year into COVID, remote work-life balance with technology and all this kind of stuff. What are some tips and tricks that we can share with people about how to balance the work-life balance with all the technology that is now in your home, right? Like, I have an office in my home, but whenever my day is done, I shut the door and that's it. Like, I'm done for the day. And I think people are having a hard time navigating this, but this is definitely part of technology, because since we have these, right, we can be constantly connected, but is that healthy? So let's talk.
Sorry, but my favorite saying is, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's true. It's true. So let's talk a little bit about work-life balance as it relates to technology and being connected all the time.
Well, it definitely makes you more productive, right? So if you're using it the right way, you're more productive. And I'm probably not the best person to talk on this, since I don't do it a lot myself, but I encourage other people to do it. But really, when your day's over, you should turn it off. So turn off your email notifications, turn off your Slack or Teams notifications. Like, literally put yourself as away and turn off your notifications, because otherwise you're going to keep being pulled back in, and you're not going to have that work-life balance. You're going to be working more than you ever did previously.
I think kind of along those same lines, Rachel, a lot of people tend to think, well, if I get it done, if I work late today, then I'll get it done and then I'll be in a better place tomorrow. Well, it keeps coming. So you could justify that every day. Yeah. The more you do at 7 p.m., the more things you tee up to then start the next day. So I think it's important to remind yourself that even though I think I might be getting more done to make tomorrow easier, I'm most likely not. And so does it make sense to do more work tonight that won't long-term make me more productive? Or does it make more sense to close my computer for my own mental health and go on a walk outside and forget about work for a few hours? Because regardless, it's piling up, just is what it is.
Not only that, but you're setting the expectation that you will work at 6:30.
Deanna always says that. Once you do it, that's,
you can't take it back.
No, you got to be prepared to finish out how you start out. So start out with boundaries.
Yeah.
Well, and Shannon, you said mental health too, which I think is key in this, with so many of us being in remote environments now. I mean, how often do you actually pull yourself away from your technology where maybe you used to have a lunch break previously and now you don't? So, you know, that you step outside and you're like, oh, the sun's shining today or, you know, something like that. And you do need that for your mental health.
Yeah, I also think too, that you should, you know, from again, a mental health perspective, it's easy to say you should have a dedicated workspace, but if you can set boundaries in that regard as well, that most likely would help. So you're not carrying your computer all around the house. And then that's what you're used to. You have it sitting in a spot that it doesn't leave from to the extent possible. And I also think that, you know, part of the problem with all of this is that we think we have to use technology in the same way over and over. It's okay to not have a Zoom call. It's okay to have a call over the phone. Maybe you just don't want to see someone's face that day. You know, I have a client that every time, we have never seen each other's face because she's out of state, and she still says, I have done Zoom calls all day. We are just doing a phone call. And our reoccurring call is just a phone call. And there's something nice about knowing that's the case because it's the end of the day anyway. So I think don't feel obligated because you have Zoom or Teams to use it. Sometimes it's just better to have a phone call. Just because you have the technology, Deanna, doesn't mean.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right.
Yeah. And we just wrote, I think it's up on the website. We just wrote a blog about this, you know, feeling the squeeze of living and working all in the same place and setting boundaries around that. I don't know if you guys have seen that term fake commute at all, but I had read an article, I think last month or something, about a fake commute because previously you were getting up, you were going through your routine, getting kids ready, getting breakfast, doing all of that stuff. And then you were ramping up for work for your drive in. And then kind of the same thing at the end of the day, you might have gone to happy hour with your coworkers or run errands or whatever, and you're ramping down to get back into your home life on your drive home. And we don't really have that unless you count from waking up to the kitchen for coffee to your workstation for work, if that's what somebody's routine is. So, you know, they were talking about, you know, creating somewhat of a fake commute so you can have that ramp up and ramp down period to create not only a physical separation, but a mental separation from living and working all in the same space.
So is the suggestion getting in your car and driving around your street and then coming back? Or
yeah, drive around the block, come back in.
Well,
I'm here.
I mean, but honestly, when you said that, it made me think. I mean, part of my routine used to be like you would close everything up at the office, and then I would just blast my music in my car. That was kind of my mental release of whatever went on during the day. And by the time I got home to my family, I was in a good place. So I could be there for them mentally and then accept whatever I was walking, you know, whatever chaos I might be walking into my house, you know, and like you said, a lot of people are now just walking from their, if they do have a dedicated office space, but a lot of people don't right now. And so you're walking from your, you know, dining room table to your living room and there's no time to be prepared for what awaits.
I think even the physical process of shutting down your laptop, you know, turning off your phone or, you know, whatever it is that you're working on. Somebody else had even recommended, and maybe we should develop this product. This would be fun, but like a laptop hideaway case where, you know, I mean, you could use something as simple as a box, but everything that you use for your daily work, put in a box at the end of the day, and that's your ramp down. And then in the morning, you open your box, you put everything up, and you know, so something similar to that.
You know,
it's got to be something that locks.
Yeah,
and so like you get the code the next morning or something to unlock it.
Yeah, 5 o'clock, it's like lockdown, and it won't open till 8.
I actually do that for my daughter for her virtual school. She has a box of all her things that she needs for school, and it works for her. Maybe I should should do that for myself. She takes all her stuff and puts it in there after she's done with school. And then she knows exactly where everything is and takes it out when it's time to start school in the morning. And she knows that that is where she needs to go and what she needs to do to grab everything out. So
She has a fake commute.
she has a fake commute.
Mhm.
I think too, we're dealing with, and Robert, we can all kind of relate, Jessica, as well. You would just reference your daughter. There's technology overload in my house. I'm not only using a slew of technology for my own personal life, for my work life. I have 3 different platforms for my kids' school. So it's just really acknowledging that it's coming from all directions. So if you're going to utilize or implement it, make sure it makes sense, because you are adding to a bucket that is full.
Yeah.
I mean, the passwords and usernames and documents that I have, it's can get overwhelming. So just make sure it makes sense.
Absolutely. Okay, so technology as it relates to HR, I think we've covered it, right? Efficiencies, training. Gosh, please with the training. That's so important. Have a point person, because if you don't have that point person, how are you going to get buy-in, right? Set boundaries, make a fake commute, whatever that looks like. Any other recaps that we want to make sure we highlight? Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right, Deanna? Is that it? Did I say that right?
Yep.
I think that goes with, choosing a software too. Just because it has bells and whistles doesn't mean you got to use them all. You can pick and choose what works best for you, and be selective. It's okay to be selective. Choose what works for you. I'm going to go back to my cupcakes. I guess I'm really feeling cupcakes today, but if you like to make cupcakes and that is your thing, then do that. Let us do the HR. Let us do the technology and managing that for you. You don't have to be good at everything. It's okay to not be good at everything. I've just given you permission.
There you go.
Well, thanks for joining us. Any last words about technology, friends? No? Good?
I think we covered it. Good job, team.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope you got some good information about technology, and feel free to reach out to Robert at employersadvantagellc.com if you have any questions.
Bye.